Hey, it's Jessica DaMassa with WTF Health. I'm here at HIMSS Europe and Health 2.0 Europe, and joining me right now, I have Lina Behrens. She is the Director for Digital Drugs at Flying Health, which is a really cool title, and we're going to come back to digital drugs and what that means because it's so hot right now. But before that, Lina, tell me a little bit about Flying Health. What do you guys do?
Sure. We are an ecosystem for digital health based in Berlin, and we work with different ecosystem players ranging from pharma, medtech, hospital groups, but also a lot of startups to try and see what the next generation of healthcare might look like.
Okay, so I love this idea of what the next generation of healthcare might look like. And so the way you explained it to me is it's like you've got these big companies that are like, how do we bring these startups in? What do we even look for? And you guys are helping them figure that out.
Sure.
Okay. So tell me a little bit, I guess, about what these big companies, like the med tech companies, the pharma companies, there's quite a few based in Berlin or in Germany. What are their concerns about the next generation of health? Like what kinds of things are they asking you for help with?
So what we see is that the actors within healthcare are actually changing. So we have all the different tech giants moving into the healthcare space. We have all the different startups trying to innovate here and there. So the role of the traditional players have to change, and they don't know exactly where to go and how to adapt their business model to actually work in the next generation of healthcare.
What kinds of things are they asking for help with specifically? Because I know we see this a lot, especially with tech, with health tech. It's like they want to take the existing thing and just make it digital. So, I mean, beyond that, they need to kind of reinvent their business models and do some other things. So what are you being asked for help with specifically?
Sure. So some questions might be how they can innovate on clinical trials, which obviously is a big topic, but then also how to maybe combine their existing products with some digital like apps or other products to really make it different, make it better, trying to find their own USP using digital models going forward.
So digital therapeutics are so hot right now. Are you being asked about that a lot?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm actually excited for the.
Is this where the digital drugs come in?
Exactly. So for us, digital drugs is actually a subset of digital therapeutics because we have seen that digital therapeutics is quite a wide field still.
Ooh, okay, so tell me in your words then the difference between digital drugs versus digital therapeutics.
Okay. So digital drugs actually trigger a direct physiological response for the patient.
Okay.
So imagine that, for instance, you have myopia. It's one of our spin-offs is working on that. You have myopia. The reason for myopia is the length of your eyeball, which grows during childhood. And at the moment, there's no treatment for that. And the company is working on a digital way to influence the length of the eyeball by shining light into the retina in a certain way so that the neurotransmitter cascade gets going to actually influence the length of the eyeball, thereby treating a disease that might not sound as severe, but if you look at Asia, it's becoming a huge problem. And the stronger the more myopic you are, the higher likelihood you have for even more serious diseases.
Oh my gosh, so this is actually like training your eye to like change its shape. So a digital drug is something that actually causes physiological change. Excellent.
Exactly.
Okay, very cool. No, I have not heard that carved out quite that way, so that's very neat. So in terms of other areas of digital drugs, are there any things that you're looking at right now?
Sure. So one company is working on mental health, which obviously is a big topic in general within digital health. But here, if you look at brain scans of people with and without depression, you can see certain differences in the structure of the brain. And the company is working on how to kind of retrain those structures so that you have more positive memories, which is one of the underlying causes for depression.
As you're kind of on the forefront of this and you're working with these big established healthcare companies, the pharma companies, life sciences companies, med device companies, obviously they've got a huge responsibility in the market and they're very concerned about passing all of the regulatory requirements. Give me a sense of what kind of regulatory is emerging here around digital drugs and or the larger category of digital therapeutics, because I feel like this is still emerging. So give me kind of a state of play from where you sit.
Yeah, so what we see in Europe is the new medical device regulation, which will come into place mid of next year. And actually, the changes is basically that a lot of the software, the digital health companies, will fall into a more highly regulated class because they're all medical devices. And for this digital drugs, which is kind of not quite a drug, not quite a well, it is a medical device, but in terms of how it might work, it might also because it triggers a direct physiological response. We'll have to see how regulation can actually address that.
I'm sure that's a big question that you get asked all the time. Yeah.
All the time. And because of all the changes, it's still quite fluid.
Yeah, it's emerging. So I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you're not being asked about anymore? So we were talking about like the digital health space and how, I mean, this is rapidly evolving over the last, decade or so. I mean, more so even in the last 5 years as those big tech companies enter in and all of this. So is there anything like, what's really hot right now? Digital therapeutics is one thing, and then I want to know what's not hot. What is nobody asking you about anymore?
Yeah, so what we see is quite interesting that a lot of the digital health applications are not being seen as innovative anymore, but they still haven't quite become mainstream in actual delivery of care. So whilst you might say, you might give examples of a certain or a better way to treat patients, and people might say, well, this is not exciting. Like, we have heard this before.
Right.
You still don't see it in actual, in practice, and you still have areas where everything is done on paper, where you still have faxes, etc. So in Germany, there are some changes in regulation, which let us be quite hopeful that this will change us. But this kind of mismatch between expectations of what innovation might look like and should look like and what is done in practice, that's huge. And that's what people don't ask as much. Like, how can I actually make sure that every patient receives that care?
Do you have an answer for that? We'll put you on the spot. What's your opinion? I mean, you're working with these companies. So, I mean, it becomes one of those things where the company really needs to look at their own business model. Sure. Like, it's not enough just to acquire a startup and then just hope for the best. Like, you really have to learn how to integrate that in. I mean, what do you guys say? I mean, you're consulting with them.
Sure. So I think for me it's really important that people really think through what it might look like really in the future, and not try to take baby steps and maybe take a process that is already happening like one-on-one today and just put it into a digital space. Right. Okay, that's fine. I mean, it's the first step, but really think about what you think the next generation of healthcare might look like and take those steps, bigger steps to actually go there. And I think that's important. Like, if we start small, we will never get to that vision and the potential that digital health can actually deliver.
Lina, that's awesome. I love that. Let's just skip all of this and just make some big changes. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Jessica DaMassa with WTF Health. Thanks so much for watching.